Welcome to NYNJPA Weather, your weather source for the Northern Mid-Atlantic. I'm meteorologist Stephen DiMartino. On the surface map today, high pressure is giving way as rain continues to move through the Northern Mid-Atlantic. An area low pressure is currently over the Mississippi River Valley will drive to the northeast towards central New York by tonight, producing widespread moderate to heavy rain throughout much of the New York City and Philadelphia metropolitan area. However, the majority of the heaviest rain will remain over western New York as this low pressure center moves to the west of the region. The good news about that is that temperatures will remain rather warm, actually well above normal, with highs in the lower 60s by tomorrow. However, the warm conditions are not going to last for very long. Let's take a look at this forecast. Periods of moderate to at times heavy rain will continue to move through the New York City and Philadelphia metropolitan area through today, into tonight, and through tomorrow morning. Now, notice how the rainfall is streaming from the Mississippi River Valley into the northern Mid-Atlantic. The heaviest rain, basically that area right around Missouri, the Delaware River, Tennessee, Kentucky, that area of heavy rain will move towards western New York and will not reach the northern Mid-Atlantic. The reason why, again, is because the low pressure center is going to remain to the west of the region. It's basically the come ahead of the low pressure center. So what we can expect is basically some rounds of moderate to heavy rain, some embedded thunderstorms because we're in the warm sector of this storm, and also at times a break here and there in the rainfall, which is going to limit our overall rainfall potential. I'm looking anywhere from a half an inch to an inch of rain by the time all of this is done. A few isolated locations could reach up to an inch and a quarter. But for the most part, again, the heaviest rain will remain over western New York. On the water vapor satellite picture, we're seeing an interesting development starting to form here. Now, right now, we have a neutral NAO pattern. When the North Atlantic Oscillation, or NAO, is positive or slightly neutral positive, then storms are able to move up into the St. Lawrence River Valley, which is basically around Ontario, Lake Ontario, western New York, that location. Now, when the NAO is negative, that means there's strong upper level lows around the Canadian Maritimes, and that usually forces storm tracks further to the east off the east coast. That's why a negative NAO is so important to the northern Mid-Atlantic when it comes to winter storms. When it's positive or neutral, well, the NAO tends to allow storms to track further west. When the NAO is negative, watch out because the storms are going to track further east along the coast and could lead to moderate to heavy snow in some instances. In this case, the NAO is slightly positive to neutral, and that's going to allow this storm to move into the Canadian Maritimes, which later is going to cause some interesting problems for around Thanksgiving, but I'll get to that in a moment. Behind this low pressure center and behind this disturbance, cooler polar air will build in and knock our temperatures down into the 40s for Thursday, Friday, and partially for Saturday. We'll start seeing a warm-up for Saturday into Sunday, and then Monday and Tuesday as a ridge builds over the eastern United States. Let's take a look at the latest European model guidance from the Penn State EWAL website. Now, at 500 millibars, there are a few very interesting features developing. Our storm for today is moving into the Canadian Maritimes, but notice around the Canadian Maritimes we have an upper level low and an upper trough starting to form. That's our developing negative NAO, and this storm for today is going to reach the Canadian Maritimes and enhance the development of this upper level feature. Further to the north off the map over Greenland, a ridge is building. And when you get a ridge building over Greenland, building into northern Canada, and you get an upper level low around the Canadian Maritimes, that drives cold air, which is going to be driven by this polar vortex or upper level low over central Canada. Drives cold air down into the northern plains, and eventually it bleeds east. The problem? Notice why I have circled in yellow over the southwest. That's what I call my Thanksgiving trouble. Our southeast ridge is starting to shift east, and this disturbance is going to start to interact with that cold air. That's going to be a problem for around Thanksgiving. Let's take a look at 850 millibars. Now again, this is Monday night, so we are clearly in a warm regime with high pressure in control, so we're going to be well above normal for temperatures. Temperatures in the upper 50s, possibly even a few lower 60s, but overall, like I said, warm and generally dry. But notice the power of this Arctic air that is moving down the Canadian prairies and towards the northern plains. The thermal gradient over the Mississippi River Valley and the Central Plains is rather impressive and indicates a powerful Arctic cold front is going to be moving south and southeast. Now, the problem here is that when you get a strong thermal gradient, you tend to have a developing low pressure center that can become rapidly intense. And also notice that with this low pressure center, moisture from the Gulf of Mexico starts to entrain north and northeastward through the Mississippi River Valley and towards the mid-Atlantic. So we have a cold front that has a dynamic thermal gradient with Arctic air behind it, with moisture streaming ahead of it. That usually leads to a cold front that can produce moderate to heavy rainfall on Wednesday once the cold front actually reaches the northern mid-Atlantic. Then we have that area low pressure. What happens with that area low pressure? That's basically the big question for Thanksgiving. When we have a negative NAO pattern, or when the NAO switches from negative to positive or positive to negative, that's when most storms develop along the East Coast, because you have a change in the atmosphere, and changes in the atmosphere produce storms. So, with this area low pressure developing around the southern plains and driving towards the mid-Atlantic, timing is going to be very important. Where does the Arctic cold front set up? How fast does the cold air move in? Does the cold air move in after the low pressure exits, or moves in as the low pressure moves into the northern mid-Atlantic? I think that Thanksgiving morning is going to be a rather interesting morning for much of the northern mid-Atlantic. Snow potential, I think, is going to be further into the interior. However, well, Old St. Nick might be coming in with snow flurries rather than raindrops, depending on the timing of this low pressure center and the advance of the Arctic air mass. It is surely going to be a very interesting time period around Thanksgiving. Timing, like I said, is very important, and details are still rather foggy, pardon the pun. But I would be very, very cautious about Thanksgiving travel. Plan ahead and use some caution. Perhaps maybe make some plans to give yourself a little bit more time to get to your destination. Thank you for trusting in NYNJPA weather as your weather source for the northern mid-Atlantic. I'm meteorologist Stephen DiMartino. Have an excellent day.